Jennifer Gledhill lived in a quiet neighborhood where the houses stood in neat rows and families greeted each other with polite smiles across freshly cut lawns. To outsiders, she seemed to embody everything a person could want. At 32, she was attractive, well-dressed, and married to Thomas Gledhill, a respected local businessman known for his professionalism and steady demeanor. Together they owned a spacious home on a tree-lined street, the kind of place where people assumed happiness was guaranteed. Jennifer moved through life with a certain grace that inspired admiration from friends and envy from acquaintances. She attended community events, organized dinners, and often volunteered at the local library, presenting the image of a woman who had it all together. Yet behind the smiles and polished exterior, there were cracks forming in the life she had built, cracks that no one seemed to notice at first. Thomas worked long hours at his company, often leaving early in the morning and returning late at night. His dedication to success had brought the couple financial comfort but cost them intimacy. Many evenings, Jennifer sat alone at the dining room table with untouched food growing cold while the house remained silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. She told herself it was only temporary, that once Thomas's workload lightened, they would reconnect. But the weeks stretched into months, and the distance between them grew larger. Even when he was home, his attention rarely drifted away from his phone or the laptop balanced on his knees. Their conversations became short, transactional, and void of warmth. The laughter that once filled their home was replaced with the quiet weight of unspoken frustrations. Friends who saw Jennifer at social gatherings noticed her cheerful energy, but none suspected the loneliness that crept into her nights. She was skilled at masking her emotions, skilled at presenting the perfect version of herself. She carried this act so convincingly that even those closest to her would have been shocked to know how often she cried behind closed doors. The life that looked polished from the outside was, in truth, a routine of isolation. Her days became predictable, and the emptiness pressed in on her more heavily as time passed. Jennifer began searching for small ways to fill the void. She spent longer hours at the gym, started taking new classes, and lingered in coffee shops just to be around people. These were harmless distractions at first, yet they highlighted what she was missing at home. She longed for someone to notice her, to make her feel alive again. What she did not realize was that these simple efforts to escape boredom would set her on a path she could never turn back from. The appearance of perfection, so carefully built, was beginning to fracture beneath the surface, though no one on the outside could see it yet. The story of Jennifer Gledhill was about to take a dark turn, one that would shock the very community that once envied her life. It started innocently enough, as many dangerous choices do. Jennifer first noticed Mark Ellis at the gym she frequented on weekday mornings. He was a personal trainer, confident and approachable, with an easy smile that drew people in. At first, their conversations were nothing more than polite exchanges, a comment about the weather or encouragement during a workout. But over time, Jennifer found herself lingering near him, drawn to the attention he offered so freely. Unlike Thomas, who seemed consumed by his career, Mark listened to her with genuine interest. He asked questions about her day, her hobbies, her goals, and in those moments, she felt seen in a way she hadn't in years. The interactions soon became the highlight of her day. She would carefully choose her workout outfits, not just for comfort but to catch his eye. Their casual talks grew longer, spilling into shared coffees after her sessions, where their conversations turned more personal. Jennifer spoke about her frustrations with Thomas's absence and the loneliness that haunted her evenings. Mark sympathized, gently assuring her that she deserved more than silence in a big house. He had a way of making her feel special, as if she mattered in a world that had overlooked her. What began as emotional comfort soon slipped into something more. A text message here, a late-night phone call there, and before long, Jennifer was living two lives. She justified her choices by convincing herself that it wasn't serious, that she was simply reclaiming happiness. But the truth was more complicated. Every meeting with Mark deepened her attachment. They began arranging secret encounters, renting hotel rooms under false names or retreating to Mark's modest apartment, far from the polished perfection of her suburban home. The thrill of secrecy excited her, even as guilt gnawed at the edges of her conscience. For a while, she believed she had mastered the art of deception. She deleted messages, invented excuses, and perfected her smile when Thomas asked how her day had been. But secrets have a way of slipping through even the tightest defenses. A neighbor spotted her car parked outside Mark's building one evening, long after the gym had closed. Whispers began to circulate in the community, though no one dared confront her directly. Rumors are fragile things, but they spread quickly, and Jennifer's carefully crafted image of the perfect wife began to unravel in the eyes of those who once admired her. Still, she couldn't bring herself to stop. The more she saw Mark, the more entangled she became. The excitement distracted her from the guilt, and she convinced herself that no one truly knew. But small changes in her behavior betrayed her secrets. She guarded her phone closely, made vague excuses for late nights, and wore a newfound glow that Thomas could not ignore. The affair, once hidden in shadows, was pushing its way into the light. What Jennifer thought was harmless escape had transformed into something dangerous, a storm quietly gathering strength, preparing to break apart the fragile balance of her life. Thomas had always trusted Jennifer. For years, he had seen her as the stable center of his life, someone who kept their home in order while he focused on building a future for them both. But that trust began to erode when he noticed subtle shifts in her behavior. She had always been predictable, her routines neat and consistent, but suddenly there were irregularities he couldn't ignore. She stayed out later than usual, offered vague reasons for her absences, and carried her phone with a kind of protectiveness that seemed unnecessary. When he asked simple questions about where she had been, her answers came too quickly, rehearsed, as if she had prepared them in advance. At first, Thomas dismissed these suspicions as paranoia born from stress at work. Yet the nagging feeling persisted, gnawing at him every night as he lay awake in the quiet house while Jennifer claimed to be out with friends. Small details added fuel to his growing unease, the scent of unfamiliar cologne lingering faintly on her clothes, the occasional unexplained charge on their shared credit card, the way she seemed distracted even in his presence. Each piece was small, but together they painted a picture he could no longer ignore. His breaking point came one evening when Jennifer left her purse on the kitchen counter. She was in the shower, and for the first time in their marriage, Thomas allowed his suspicion to override his respect for her privacy. Inside, tucked neatly between receipts and loose change, he found several slips from a downtown hotel. The dates matched nights when she had claimed to be running errands or meeting with friends. The discovery crushed him, confirming what his instincts had already suspected. His wife was seeing someone else. The revelation sparked something dark within Thomas. Rather than confronting her directly, he chose to keep his knowledge hidden, studying her carefully, waiting for more clues. Anger mixed with a strange fascination as he tracked her movements, noting each lie, each unexplained absence. He began leaving work earlier to follow her car at a distance, his heart pounding each time she turned down a road that did not lead home. The more he uncovered, the more consumed he became. What began as suspicion had grown into obsession. Jennifer, unaware that her double life was now under surveillance, continued slipping deeper into her affair. She believed she had perfected the art of deception, but Thomas saw through every performance. He noticed the way her eyes lit up when she read certain text messages, the care she took with her appearance before she claimed to meet friends, the sudden energy that contrasted so sharply with the emptiness she showed him. For Thomas, betrayal was no longer an abstract fear. It was a living wound, and each lie Jennifer told was salt rubbed into it. His quiet, disciplined nature began to unravel, replaced by a cold determination to uncover the full truth. He no longer viewed himself as a husband simply wronged, but as an investigator piecing together evidence in a case that had become personal. In his silence, danger brewed, because Thomas was no longer just a man dealing with heartbreak. He was a man planning his next move, and the world Jennifer had built in secrecy was inching closer to collapse. The air was sharp with winter cold on the night, everything fell apart. Jennifer left her house under the guise of meeting a friend for dinner, but her real destination was Mark's apartment across town. She believed she had covered her tracks carefully, unaware that Thomas had already pieced together her secrets. For days, he had followed her movements in silence, studying her every step. That evening, his suspicion transformed into action. He parked his car a short distance away, watching her enter the building, his mind unraveling as he prepared to confront the truth in person. Inside, Jennifer felt a flicker of excitement as she stepped into Mark's apartment, shaking off the chill. But instead of the warmth she expected, she was met with something else entirely. Thomas was there, waiting in the shadows. The man she had deceived stood face to face with the man she had chosen in secrecy. In that instant, the double life Jennifer had so carefully constructed collided violently with reality. What had been whispers and shadows was now exposed in the harsh light of confrontation. Neighbors later told police they heard shouting, muffled at first but then escalating into something raw and violent. Though no one could recall the exact words, the voices carried tones of rage, fear, and desperation. The noise built to a frenzy before a heavy crash echoed through the walls, startling those living nearby. Some dismissed it as a lover's quarrel, not realizing they had just heard the final moments of Jennifer Gledhill's life. The details of what happened inside the apartment could only be pieced together from the blood spatter, the overturned furniture, and the conflicting statements of the two men who survived the night in very different ways. Jennifer lay lifeless on the living room floor, her body positioned awkwardly as though she had fallen suddenly. Mark was injured, his head bloodied, claiming he had been attacked by Thomas in a sudden fit of rage. According to him, Thomas had stormed into the apartment and, in the chaos, fatally struck Jennifer before turning on him. But Thomas was gone before police arrived, vanishing into the night without a trace. When officers entered the scene hours later, they found Mark barely conscious and Jennifer already dead. The apartment bore signs of a struggle, but there was no clear narrative to explain what had truly happened. Was it an argument turned violent between the lovers that spiraled out of control? Or had Thomas, consumed by betrayal, delivered a fatal blow in a moment of uncontrollable fury? The absence of Thomas left only questions, and the bloody scene offered no definitive answers. What was undeniable was the brutality of the moment. A woman who once seemed to embody the perfect suburban life was now reduced to a victim of violent passion, her secrets laid bare for the world to see. The shock rippled through the community that had once admired her, leaving friends and neighbors grappling with the realization that behind the carefully tended lawns and polite greetings, something darker had been brewing all along. 4 weeks after Jennifer's death, Thomas Gledhill became the focus of a nationwide search. His disappearance painted him as a guilty man, and the image of him fleeing into the night cemented the narrative that he had murdered his wife in a jealous rage. News outlets ran constant coverage, portraying him as a husband who snapped under the weight of betrayal. Tips poured in from across the country, but each lead seemed to end in frustration. Meanwhile, the community that once admired the Gledhills watched in disbelief as the perfect life they had envied dissolved into scandal and tragedy. The breakthrough came when investigators tracked Thomas to a remote cabin hidden deep within the woods of another state. He had been living alone, surviving on supplies bought under false names, moving cautiously and avoiding any trace that could give him away. When law enforcement surrounded the cabin, Thomas surrendered without resistance. His capture was broadcast live, and the public finally saw the man accused of killing the wife he had once seemed to cherish. Yet what stunned people even more was the story he told once in custody. Thomas insisted he was not the one who killed Jennifer. According to his version of events, he followed her that night intending to confront her about the affair, but when he arrived at Mark's apartment, he found chaos already unfolding. He claimed Jennifer and Mark had been in a heated argument, and by the time he stepped inside, she was already on the floor, unresponsive. Thomas admitted to panicking, certain no one would believe his innocence if he stayed. He fled not because of guilt, he said, but because he knew the evidence would inevitably point to him. His words added a new layer of uncertainty to the already twisted case. Mark, on the other hand, gave a very different account. He told investigators that Thomas had stormed into the apartment in a jealous rage, attacked them both, and struck Jennifer fatally during the struggle. The injuries to Mark's head supported his version, at least on the surface, but questions remained. Forensic evidence showed inconsistencies that neither man's story fully explained. Blood patterns in the apartment suggested Jennifer may have been caught between the two men during a violent confrontation, but no clear timeline could be confirmed. The trial drew massive attention, each day revealing new fragments of a story that seemed impossible to piece together. The jury listened as experts debated over the physical evidence, while both men maintained their versions with unwavering conviction. Some observers believed Thomas's calm testimony made him credible, while others felt his flight was the undeniable mark of a guilty man. In the end, the jury delivered a verdict of second-degree murder against Thomas, sentencing him to decades behind bars. Mark walked free, carrying scars from that night, but no legal consequences. Yet doubt lingered long after the verdict. Many in the public questioned whether justice had been served or if the truth had been buried beneath layers of lies and half-confessions. Jennifer's death remained a tragedy without clarity, a cautionary tale of secrets, betrayal, and the devastating cost of choices made in silence. What began as a hidden affair had ended in a courtroom, leaving behind a story that still divided everyone who tried to untangle it. If you enjoy gripping true crime stories filled with mystery, secrets, and shocking twists, Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel Crime Uncovered.